Hi, I'm Vicky.
And I'm Josie, and we're taking communal and intergenerational living little by slowly. um, I'm not gonna lie, like 5 seconds before we press play, I was like, what am I gonna say for this? And then I remembered I lived in a whole communal household for a year.
Yeah, and I lived, as I said in I think 2 episodes ago now, I lived at home for a while. So yeah, and I currently live in an intergenerational situation. So,
Yeah.
and I felt the same way. I was like, I don't know why I was questioning the topic for a second.
I was too, but then I remember like this is our lived experience. Like we have
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go ahead first.
Okay. So I have always been very big on like community overall. And I think a lot about my friendships and how when I envision myself growing old, I don't necessarily envision myself growing old with a partner. I envision myself growing old with my friends.
Mm.
I have some friends who have like a similar mindset, and we talk about like, yeah, what if we just bought a house or like some townhomes and live together and then share like a courtyard? Like that is a vision of communal living that I do have in my life. And if we were to have children, having our families and children there and being able as a village for each other, act as a village for each other.
Yeah.
And so that is a dream and a fantasy that I hold. um, and I think I feel like communal living isn't taken as an option enough. Because I think we live in a very much in a type of society where it's just kind of like, yep, every family sticks to their own, everyone does things to their own, but this isn't new, right?
Yeah, and I feel like once you get past a quote unquote certain age, living with roommates or living with other people that aren't necessarily your partner is kind of frowned upon. Especially like I was saying, I have my own personal things that I have to go through about the idea of living at home past a certain amount of years, and a lot of that is definitely not for my parents because they would have let me live there until I was ready to leave, but from external people, even family members who are like, why do you still live at home? You need to be independent. You need to be free. And it's like, who says that I'm not independent just because I live at home? So,
Very interesting. I feel like, so I've been living in my own since I was like 18, 19 with like roommates and stuff like that. And I feel like my family has always pushed me to move back in with like my grandma because they're like, why not live with someone like because I did live with her for like 3 months and we would help each other out with like groceries and stuff like that. And she would do the cooking and I just like hang out there with her.
yeah.
And I don't think it's that I wouldn't feel free. I think I just worried too much about her worrying about me. And I was like, let me take off that little load for you. But also, how weird is it that I'm worrying about people worrying about me?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is part of living in a community, and being in a community of people is
having
accepting
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 help.
Yes.
And then also accepting care and accepting I can't think of the other word that I was thinking of. It escaped me. But yeah.
Yes. And the reason I had such a big reaction to the word accepting is because I feel like I struggle a lot with accepting care, with accepting help, with accepting just everything from people. And I think a lot of it is because I have lived on my own for so long. So I have this very individual mentality. And I feel like living on my own too, having roommates has always blessed me, has always very much what is that word? Humbled me. It has humbled me because sometimes I don't want to have an only child mentality, but sometimes I do be having an only child mentality because of how long I've lived for myself.
Okay.
And I'm like,
and for the record, you're not an only child.
I'm not an only child. No, I'm not an only child. But I feel like if I get into the rhythm of doing things too much by myself, I do get into that type of mentality, and I hate that. I hate that. And I feel like communal living really is humbling because it teaches you to accept and it teaches you to really have grace with others too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any experience with communal living in that sense. I never lived in a dorm or in like a situation where I had folks that weren't related to me, like living with me. I lived at home until I was in my second year of grad school. And then I moved out and I lived with my fiance for a year. And then we moved into a house that he purchased in 2020. And now we live here with his mom and his sister. So now it's the four of us. Their two cats and our two dogs. um, and yeah, I don't know. I really like living with family. It's kind of like having that extra layer of comfort and familiarity. I can't imagine living outside of that. I think the 1 year that I lived with just my fiance and our two dogs was obviously nice and like a great opportunity for us to like get to know each other and our living habits and stuff. But I missed my family so much. Like it definitely had nothing to do with him, but I like was crying a bunch when I
Oh.
first moved in just because I had lived with like my parents and my older sister and our family dog for so many years, and like not being able to like go down to the kitchen and see my mom cooking or go into the living room and like bug my dad, or like when I come home from school or like hanging out with my friends, going to lay in the bed and watching TV with my mom. Like it was like all these things that just like, oh, it like hurt my heart. And having to like carve out time to see them felt very
Mm.
unnatural for me. Where I was like, I used to just be able to like walk downstairs and like see them and hang out, but now I had to be very intentional about like I'm spending every single Sunday with my mom. I'm going grocery shopping with her. This is what I'm doing. It felt very unnatural. I've since gotten used to it because I no longer live with my family. I live with my fiance's family. Um yeah, and that's nice in its like own ways too. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think not living with family definitely brings on loneliness.
Yeah.
And I think that is also like a big downside of independence is it is loneliness. It
Mhm.
is because I know like I felt very similar and from time to time I do like whenever like my roommate goes out of town I'm just like I'm alone. And then I
Yeah.
go into these thoughts and I'm like, okay. But I always tell myself like I don't think I could ever live by myself
Mhm.
because I do like having somebody else there, somebody else to take on the daily load of like chores and stuff like that. And somebody who's there to be able to like knock on their door and be like, hi.
Yeah.
Or even just someone to like like you said, just like sit around and do nothing with. Um and that like when I visit my family too, that's what our weekends look like. We sit at the table, we eat, I take a nap, I come back to the table, my grandma's doing a puzzle, we're just existing all with each other without
Yeah.
having to do much more, and I think that's very beautiful, nice, and comforting. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And it kind of makes me think of like how we're kind of trained to want to be alone and to like want independence and to want to like be separate from your family, and it's definitely something that's like pushed onto young people. um and I'm not gonna front, I like wanted to live on my own for a while. I
Yeah.
was very like, I don't want to live at home anymore. Like it wasn't all like rainbows and sunshine all the time, but I think, I don't know, as we've been saying this entire time, there's so much value in living at home, so, and like living with family, not necessarily at home. So yeah.
Mhm. Um, do you remember that was it a podcast or a clip that I sent you one time where it was like, yeah, the idea of living alone is definitely like, a capitalist idea because you
Yeah.
have to go out and buy things individually instead of
Yeah.
buying things together, and, like, it's I'm stuck here.
Yeah.
Um, um, but yeah, no, I I think what you're saying right now, like, very much, like, touches on that. Like, there is a big push to live on your own and, like, being independent and doing all things on your own, but you don't have to.
Yeah,
Nobody said
because
you have to.
there's money in isolation. If
Yeah.
you're isolated, you feel vulnerable, which means that you're gonna feel self conscious, maybe, and that'll make you buy stuff that you probably don't need. If you live alone, that means that you have to buy your own set of everything. You
Mhm.
have to do this and do that. But like when you live in a community of people that are committed to the same journey that you're on, or at least to help you get to that journey, they're gonna like help you with stuff.
Yeah.
Like they're going to drive you places if they have the capacity to do that. They're going to let you use their kitchen equipment. They're going to take care of your child, take care of your dog, all stuff that you'd have to pay for if you kind of were more isolated. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of like fear and loneliness in isolation. And in community, there can be so much care and
Yeah.
joy and thoughtfulness. And yeah.
Yeah. I think earlier you were talking about how with your mom now you have to, or you're with your family, you have to be more intentional with them.
Mhm.
Um and so with living in community, I did a year of service. I worked lived with 8 other women. I lived with 8 other women in a household that used to be a not a nunnery. What are they called?
Like a convent?
Yeah, yeah, not a nunnery. My bad. Yeah. We each had our own room, so that was nice. But we were very in because of the way our program was set up. It wasn't just about living together, but it was about living with each other in intention.
Mhm.
So cooking meals together. Everyone had a night where they would cook dinner. We would eat dinner every night together. And then also having like bonding. I think it was like Wednesday nights where we would have where we. No, I just remembered every night at dinner we would ask each other like a fun question about like our day. Not just saying like, oh, how was your day, but like something that was framed in a way that like would get more out of than just saying like good or bad.
Mhm.
And then once a week we would also have time to do like a bonding type of like activity or something like that,
Yeah.
which was very nice. And go ahead.
I was gonna say that I'm not gonna lie. At first, that would be my literal personal hell because I am so antisocial. After I get done doing something, I feel very socially drained, and then having to like have done a day of service and then coming home and like hanging out with people, I think would overwhelm me. But over time, I think I would find a lot of like I can't find the word. I want to say like relaxation in that
Yeah.
and a lot of like maybe like it's cathartic. But yeah,
Yeah.
keep going. Sorry.
No, no, I definitely had a lot of times where where I would just tell folks, I was like, "You know what? I'm skipping out on dinner." And they would ask me, "Do we need to save you a plate?" And sometimes I'd be like, "Yeah." Other times I'd be like, "Nah, Imma just lay here."
Uh-huh.
Um, and so even though we lived with intention, we also had a lot of grace for each other for
Nice.
those
Yeah.
moments where we just needed a little bit more isolation, which is weird because even though we lived in a community, the house is kind of split into two between the extroverts and the introverts. I
Mm.
would flip between the two depending on how I felt.
Yeah.
But I think even if you're an introvert, you can still live in community because parallel play exists.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just about sharing space with someone.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like while you were talking, I was thinking about how when I lived at home, my family did a lot of those things unintentionally. Like we ate our dinners together every single night. If we were out past dinner, then they would save us a plate and they would ask us like by us I mean me and my sister if we like ate out or if we needed to save a plate. When we would eat at dinner, most of the time we wouldn't talk about our days. We mostly talk about like things going on in the world, things that we were reading, things that we were watching, things that we were just interested in. And most of the time dinner wouldn't just be dinner, it'd be like dinner and then sitting there and like talking and like mingling with each other and stuff like that, and then we'd all go like our separate ways. And then it'd be like some like Saturdays and Sundays we do a similar thing for breakfast. So yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know, I just wanted to mention that we kind of had
Yeah.
similar unintentional like moments like that.
I love that. I love that. And when you describing that, it also reminded me of how, so when I was growing up, I oh when I moved to Virginia and I was 16, 17, I started working at a movie theater, so I would get home a little bit later. But even when I would get home a little bit later, my dad would always make it a point to eat with me because he didn't like the idea of anybody
Yes.
eating by themselves. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. I think it's in us talking about this right now, it's definitely a moment that I very much appreciate from my family, and it sounds like you do too. Like having those
Yeah.
moments with your family where you
Mhm.
just sit around and talk. Um, I think that's the thing I miss the most of living in like a household is just sitting and talking and eating and just sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was one of the, in addition to saving money, because our living situation was a little like complicated. The reason why my fiance and I wanted to move back to his house was like it was I think it was like a Saturday or a Sunday. We had come over to visit his mom and his sister, and we like sat and we ate with them and we watched TV and we were just laying around. And then afterwards, we both looked at each other and we're like, "That was really nice,
Nice.
huh? That
That
was
was
really
really
nice."
nice.
And that kind of like set us on a path of like
Yeah.
moving back here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Um, right. I think right now I'm thinking about how much I dislike the idea of not having independence
Hmm.
or not just because you live at home or you live within a community because that's not true. You're still able to go out and do your things. You're not lessened
Yeah.
for living with others. If anything, I think you're added like you have so much more added on to you.
Yeah, you gain so much support
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. Well, this just ended up being like very very good, very good for my
Yeah.
soul. um and I'm excited to see if, my dream and my vision pans out, and I hope it does one day.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
I think I have a similar like vision for myself. I always talk about my like with my older sister, like finding a way for us to live like in the same block or something like that. I think my family even like tried to do some research to find out if we can like buy a big plot of land and live communally in that way. Not because we're like codependent or anything, but because we just, I don't know. Doesn't that just sound so amazing to live with like your support system or live near your
Near
support
yeah.
system? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So